Thousands of workers at a huge company walk off the job. Angry mobs marching through the streets. Violence in the air. Officials asking for the National Guard. Front page headlines in newspapers all over the country. This is not some big city scene from New York or Chicago.
Oh no, it happened right here on Delmarva during the Phillips Packing Company strike of 1937. And that is the topic of this week's Throwback Thursday. Jim Duffy with Secrets of the Eastern Shore is here with the story. Welcome to Historic Studio.
Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon. Okay, so give us a refresher of the Phillips Packing Company.
So early 1900s, three country guys from Dorchester County start a packing company, just like hundreds of other small packing companies all over Delmarva, except this one takes off in a way that no other packing company did. They are soon playing on kind of a national stage, competing with Campbell's Soup, the soup company that we know today, for the top spot and the biggest packing company in the country. They've got 2,000, 2,500 employees in Cambridge. All the farmers for 50 miles around, that's all they do is grow stuff and give it to Phillips. In 1939, a Phillips executive talked to the Rotary Club, and this is how he described the number of cans that they were going to give. If they laid all the cans they made end to end, it would go from Cambridge to Los Angeles, back to Cambridge, up to New York, across the ocean to London, back to New York, and back to Cambridge. That's a lot of cans.
That's a lot of cans.
It's a really big company.
Man,
it's
okay,
a really
so
big company.
The strike, how did the strike start?
All right, so first of all, just a little background. In the 1930s, you know, the Depression is still lingering. Strikes all over the country. If you go back and look through 1930s newspapers, it's just the front pages are just coal strikes, railroad strikes, steel strikes. There were 8 strikes going on in Maryland in 1937 that the governor was worried about. And it came to Cambridge in June of that year when about a dozen workers at a tin making facility gave their boss some demands, and the boss told them, "I can't do anything for you," and they decided to just walk off the job. And so it started in this off-the-cuff manner because word spread like wildfire through the company, and all these other divisions of the company, they all started walking off the job, and they all end up in the streets of Cambridge demanding big raises and some other improvements in working conditions and things like that. The Baltimore Sun called it the biggest labor dispute in the country. It was in the New York Times, the Los Angeles papers, all over the country. And the mayor of Cambridge, in a really wonderful bit of Eastern Shore phraseology, said, "I think there's going to be right much trouble."
Oh, yeah. And he was right, wasn't he?
And he was right, Lisa. He definitely was, because there was all the workers started overturning trucks so that Phillips couldn't do any business. They were overturning trucks all over the streets. There was a lot of rock throwing. There was some gunfire. Tragically, one person died, and he was a striker. They were trying to prevent a truck from moving, and the truck driver thought he was in danger, and he took off, and this one man named John Cephas passed away. There was all kinds of negotiation. The AFL comes in, the CIO comes in, everybody. It goes on for weeks, and there's all kinds of back and forth. But in the end, most people agree that the laborers kind of lost the strike. They did get a 10% raise, but they had hoped for a lot of other changes. So they kind of lost in the end.
But there was one moment in this strike that was, I guess, historic?
Yeah, there were two things. So the labor, you know, it's the 1930s, and the labor unions, this is a time of segregation. This is a time when there are still, hard as it is to imagine, lynchings going on the Eastern Shore. But the labor movement itself had a lot of racial issues where they were protecting white workers and not black workers and that kind of thing. And this is very early in the game for a thoroughly integrated strike. And if you look at the old pictures of meetings and votes that the strikers were taking, it's black people and white people working together. And the big moment in this came when a guy named James McKnight got arrested for disorderly conduct. He was accused of throwing a rock, and they arrested him and they took him to the jail in downtown Cambridge. And this outraged all the strikers, not just the black strikers, and hundreds of people gathered at the spot where he was arrested. And from there, several hundred marched off to the jail, and they're all outside, and they're demanding Mr. McKnight's release. And there's a state cop there and a local sheriff there, and cooler heads prevailed, and they decided to release him. It must have been a crazy scene because they've got this phalanx of police officers around Mr. McKnight, and they take him out of the jail and they walk him through the crowd that's outside of the jail, and then they walk him 3 blocks down the street along High Street to the place where the other people are all gathered, and they say, if you promise us there's no violence tonight, we're going to let Mr. McKnight go. And then there's the scene of great jubilation, everybody black and white patting Mr. McKnight on the back. And it's just kind of a crazy thing. There was a letter, a black guy up in Baltimore wrote a letter to the Afro-American newspaper up there going, what just happened there? Because the only time a whole bunch of white people go to the jail about a black person, it's usually not good news. So what just happened? And it's just, history is so strange. It's like dark and stormy times and a dark and stormy issue, and you're going through all the old stories, and all of a sudden there's like this one ray of sunshine in the middle of it all. It's a very interesting phenomenon.
What just happened?
Very interesting story altogether. Thank you so much, Jim Duffy, Secrets of the Eastern Shore.